Mr. Estes, good afternoon. Welcome to Bel Air High School. We're honored to have you here today and welcome you back to your original home and being the first ever director of the Bel Air Pipe Band.
Maybe not.
Let me introduce you to the gentleman to your right. He is the current principal here at Bel Air High School, Jacob Valtierra. And to his right is the band director, Mr. Manny Talamantes. And to your left, one of your former students from the class of 83, Miss Marla Manning. 84? Sorry about that. I wanted to make her, catch up with us in age. And I'm Sammy Martinez from the class of here at Bel Air from 1971. And we met back then because my first 2 years I was in the band with Mr. Shipley. And I am a local broadcaster, 55 years in radio and TV here in the El Paso market. And without further ado, I'd like to ask you the first question. Can you please tell us who John Estes is in terms of where you were born, raised, educational background, and how you got into music?
I was born in Olton, Texas, Lamb County in the Panhandle. 1937, give you some idea, I'm pretty old. I used to entertain my aunts and uncles for a dime or a nickel singing back in the 30s and 40s or in the early 40s. Took accordion lessons, which I'm not sure that's a musical instrument, but I did that so I could play at church. I used to play Whispering Hope on Sundays sometimes, and then went to Olton High School, Olton Elementary School, with the same 60-something people for 12 years. Thought there were two kinds of music, country and Western, and really paid no attention to much else. But my family, we had an early wind-up record player, and so we played records all the time. And then one day, I was asked, would you like to be in the band? I had some health problems and couldn't play sports anymore, so I figured I might try something. And so I signed up for the band, and they gave me a B-flat scale for the tuba, and said, this is all you need to know to be in the band. So nothing to it, taught myself how to play, and then found out that wasn't even the beginning. There was a lot more to it. Heard the Navy band play, heard my Eastern New Mexico University concert band play, and I was hooked on music from then on. I'm actually a band director. I ended up at Bel Air teaching bagpipes from some other reasons. So.
What led you to El Paso and to Bel Air High School?
I had a wife and 2 kids and no job. Dr. J.M. Hanks, who was the superintendent, someone recommended that he knew a guy that was a band director that needed a job. He called me on the phone. He said, would you be interested in teaching bagpipes? Well, in 1957, I won a prize, and it was 2 records. And I selected a bagpipe record, so at least I knew what one looked like. I'd never seen one, knew nothing about it. And he said, I'm sending you a contract. It'll be in the mail Monday, sign it and come back. And I said, but you haven't even talked to me. You haven't seen me. Can I come down for the weekend? And so I came to El Paso from New Mexico, around Roswell, and met the music supervisor, Louise Little, in the parking lot at Bel Air. And she sold me on the job. She told me everything was wonderful. It was going to be neat. I would love it. And on the way back to Roswell, my wife and I just decided I could do anything for 3 years. So we'd come for 3 years. If we didn't like it, we'd go somewhere else. The next day, I had an invitation to be the band director at Pagosa Springs, Colorado. I considered the weather and decided El Paso would be a whole lot better thing than the snowstorm. So we came to El Paso and moved here August 6th, 1962. My first program was at 9 o'clock, August 8th, downtown at Cleveland Square. And all I did was drive the car and go with the pipe band. Somebody else, Louise Little was the supervisor. She was the pipe band instructor at that time. I'm not the first. But anyway, I got here Saturday night at midnight and was at work 8 o'clock Monday morning. And 30 years later, I decided to retire.
Wow. Do you have any knowledge of how Bel Air was named Bel Air and why they chose the mascot and how the pipe band got?
J.M. Hanks was assigned to a military job during World War II in Canada. And the Canadians have a group called the Canadian Black Watch. And every morning, this was told to me, every morning the Black Watch pipers, they put up the flags outside, and he was really impressed with hearing the bagpipes and stuff. And if you look at the terrain here, it's led us down by the river in the lowlands, and there's an escarpment that runs up here that's been graded down. It used to be much higher than this, and this was kind of the highlands. And since he liked the bagpipes, he told Louise Little, why don't you look into getting us a pipe band? And she did a lot of the legwork, and it came to be. And the Highlanders, because of the highlands and the lowlands and this kind of thing, was a story that they told me when I first came here. Now, I can't verify any of that, but that's what I was told is why we have Highlanders and why Bel Air. Maybe the neighborhood was called the Bel Air neighborhood. I don't know.
Do you think that Bel Air may have been connected with the group in Canada that Dr. Hanks?
No, not really, because the original colors are from the Hamilton clan, and I don't know whether how many people are aware that the Hamiltons run Balmoral Castle, which is the Queen's Scottish location. During the summertime, if she wishes to get out of London, they go up to Balmoral Castle, and it's in the Highlands. And it's really neat because in 1963, in January, the liaison officer at Fort Bliss was Lord Hamilton and his wife, and on the only snow day we got that year, we had a program at Fort Bliss. So I put my kids in the car, we drove to Fort Bliss, and performed for Mrs. Hamilton. I have pictures of it somewhere in a box. And then came to make up the snow day. I said, well, I work. And they said, that's okay, you got to come on Saturday anyway. So, I mean, that's the way it goes when you work. But I don't know. The Hamilton clan approved Bel Air High School using the red and blue tartan with the white stripes before we did the program, but that was our tartan that we were wearing at the time.
Was there any other tartan, Mr. Estes?
Not until I changed to the green, okay?
Oh, okay. Because I wasn't sure if McGregor was in there at one point.
No.
No, okay.
No, it was always Hamilton, and it's called, I think it's believed the official name is Red Dress Hamilton. I believe that's correct. It's and I have a piece of the original material that I will present to the school eventually.
Yes, sir. It would be an honor.
It's a pretty good sized piece.
Now, is this a swatch that you actually got from the Hamilton family when they came down to Fort Bliss?
No, I don't know where it came from. It was given to me as this is a piece of the original tartan. And I hope it's not too moth-eaten. It's been in a box for 60 years.
Mr. Estes, are you aware? I know that between 1967 and 1971, when I was here, they had a big presentation, and somebody actually from the Duke or Duchess of the Hamilton clan presented to one of the instructors here at Bel Air, one of the teachers, and they made a presentation, and it was framed, and we had a reunion at the time, and they made that presentation. Do you recall that?
I don't. I probably was at my elementary school teaching band
Yes,
that afternoon.
and
I don't know.
When we previously talked, you mentioned that. Also, how and when did Bel Air make the decision to establish a pipe band? Because Bel Air started in 1957.
I was under the impression that the school opened in '56 with the first 8th grade class, and so it grew a year. And when I got here in '62, in my '61 annual, which I bought at a garage sale, the pipe band is there, and they are in uniform. So it was in '59 or '60 that they established the pipe band. Now, Mrs. Little was ill, and she couldn't really do the work. They hired a girl named Brenda Hughes from Iowa University or State University that has a pipe band. She came down and worked the summer, and then I took over in August after she went home, and it's 1962. But the pipe band was at least 2 years old at that time.
And where and how did you get your training on bagpipes?
I'd never seen a bagpipe. I went to college in eastern New Mexico, which I mentioned. There were two fellows that went to college with me whose name was McQuay. Only if you go back to Scotland, it's called Mackay, and their father was an accountant in Artesia, New Mexico. And so since I lived just a few miles north of Artesia, I went down a few Sundays, and they showed me how to assemble and disassemble and repair and work on a bagpipe. And then the first day of school, now this summer class was not a program, was not a school class. The first day of school, I took my tutor book and studied like crazy so that on the second day, I could start teaching bagpipes. I'd never seen a bagpipe, knew nothing about how they worked, except what this gentleman, Bob McQuay, showed me to do. And I did all the maintenance for the whole 30 years that I was here on the bagpipes without any cost to the school other than the purchase of new bags or new pipes.
Mr. Estes, would you please describe what it was like in those early years of starting up the pipe band?
When I got here, there were 16 people. And it was difficult because I had to have the faculty approve every student that made pipe band because it was a special group. Now, I was told not to say anything negative, but in 1962, the students ran from the pipe band. They didn't understand them. They had no idea what we were doing, what we were trying to do. In fact, Roy Chambliss, our principal, asked me to play a PTA program early in the year. And he said, but can you keep it short? Because I don't really like those bagpipes. And then he told me a few years later, he said, I never knew what we had. So that was a good enough apology. Anyway, if he needed to. But it was difficult because I didn't even do well in drum class. So here I was trying to teach pipes and drums in the morning, teaching elementary band in the afternoon, and you'd never believe my schedule. Scottsdale at 1 o'clock, Isleta Grade at 3 o'clock. And if you know where those two are located, I had 5 minutes to drive like 15 miles. It can be done. But it was interesting. I had Dr. Hanks call me one day and he said, well, Estes, what do you think? You're gonna stick with us, or are we gonna assign you to something else? I told him, I love my students, I'll keep it. And I did.
Of all the performances that you had the pipe band do throughout the years, what were some of the more, I guess, high profile ones, like celebrities or
Well,
or
we played
presidents?
for President.
Okay. I thought maybe there
We
was
played
one.
for John Kennedy. They drove by so fast we didn't even get to see him. Just, he was gone. We stayed on the street downtown for a couple of 3 hours and played music for an empty block, and there was nobody there. Then along came President Johnson. We played for him. The biggest event, downtown at the Federal Building, they built a huge concrete star. and filled it with gold marigolds for Gold Star mothers. And I stood right behind Gerald Ford while he made a presentation, and I could see all these people on the buildings, and they were FBI and Secret Service, I hope, but I was considering that. But I stood right behind him and thinking, you know, if somebody takes a shot at him, I'm right in line. But that has to be one of the best. But the greatest, I think, was playing for the Black Watch when they arrived at the airport. And we met them at the airport, and they came to school on Sunday and spent 8 hours working with my pipers, teaching them to dance and do things that were really outstanding. And then when they came and marched through the halls, which started our tradition of, in the old days, we marched through the halls every Friday morning for the pep rally. We'd march through the halls and then take the students to the stadium or to the gym or whatever.
What year was that when the Black Watch came to do that?
Oh, I want to say, I don't know.
It's like-
Because we had the Black Watch, we had the Argyles.
I remember the Argyles.
And we were introduced at their performance at the downtown. The first one that I went to was the Scots Guards. And later in the evening, I was serving drinks to the bandmaster and the pipe major. I don't drink, but anyway, they were serving drinks at a party, and I was serving them, and it was kind of fun because here I was, just this, you know, plain old little guy, and here were these two people touring the world with their groups, and it was really an interesting evening. But there's been a lot of things. In fact, one time they asked me can you tell me what you did this year? And single space, 3 pages typed of the events that the Pipers did in that year. And when they got to looking at it, your kids miss school that much? But not really. We did a lot of it in the evenings and on the weekends. So.
Mr. Estes, as you reflect on your long career here at Big Red Pride, what is your fondest memory as the instructor of the pipe band?
The 1971-72 class reunion. For the first time, that evening was worth the whole 30 years. Now, the other things, we had bagpipers. One gentleman, he was from Perthshire in Scotland, had been in South America 2 weeks before being shot at by insurrection was going on down there, and he was marching through the halls, and I said, how do you like El Paso? And he said, sure. He said, that sure beats getting shot at, you know. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, just 2 weeks ago, I was in South America doing medic work with the Army. And he said, one of the pipers got sick and they needed an advance man, so they sent me up here since I was close. But little things like that, they really mean a lot. Now, I hope that answers a question.
No, yes, sir. For our new generation of Highlanders that, you know, are coming up through the grade levels here at Bel Air High School, what message would you tell them about the importance of the bagpipe band for the culture of Bel Air, for Big Red Pride?
Well, as I told someone earlier, Scotland is a state of mind. You don't have to be Scottish, and a lot of pipe bands don't allow women. A lot of them now have women, but you know, be the best you can be, do the best you can do, and stick with the school.
So every Friday, as a part of the culture, I mean, it sounds pretty amazing that the actual pipe band would lead the pep rally to the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be consistent throughout the school year.
Yeah, well, anytime we had a pep rally, we lined up in the old days at,
yes, sir.
At the 100 Hall at the South End, and we marched down the hall, up the stairs, and all the way through the building, and then back down. And the students were supposed to follow us. Now, many times they ran over us to get a good place in the pep rally, but that's okay. We survived.
No, yes, sir. That's definitely a tradition we need to bring back.
It was fun.
At least on designated pep rally days.
And a lot of the teachers opened their doors and the students stood in the doorway and cheered and all kinds. It was neat, wasn't it?
It was.
It
It was
was.
a lot of
I
fun.
hardly ever went with them. You're the drum major, you lead them, you take them where they go. And I'll meet you down here in a little bit. And so I'd stand down there and maybe talk to the coaches or somebody by the PE building. And sometimes I'd go with them.
So when I first started here at Big Red Pride about less than 2 years ago, and I was having a discussion with the director of bands, Mr. Talamantes, he was trying to explain to me the difficulty that comes with playing the bagpipes because you have to master the circular breathing. Can you speak a little bit about what it is like to master like an instrument like the bagpipe?
I wished I knew. See,
I'm sure you have a better idea than I do.
I taught myself all of this.
Yes, sir.
And was I a good teacher? She's a whole lot better teacher than I was.
No, that's not true.
That's
not
true.
at all.
Yes, it
No,
is.
It's not.
I
You,
know
you had a wonderful program, Mr. Estes. You were very fair. You had, some people would describe you as strict, but we all had fun, you know,
Well,
and that, you know, and we loved the program.
Well, I think that's what it should be. Pardon me, I get emotional sometimes. You'd think I wouldn't after. I've been retired over 30 years. Now, I did come back in 96 and 97. And it was really interesting. In 97, they said, can you come back and work this fall? And I said, I guess so. So we get on the bus to go play Midland. My contract expired before we got to Isleta, I guess. We got on about 8 or 9 o'clock, and my contract expired at 11 that day. So here I was with money to pay for all the meals, in charge of 5 buses, going to Midland, and wasn't even an employee of the district. We got there, it had rained. The bands couldn't perform, the cheerleaders did. So they asked, well, can the pipers perform? So we marched our halftime show for the Bel Air side, about the band and about 25 or 50 people. So the announcer goes, pipe band, could you do the show for our side? So we lined up on the other side and did the pipe band show for the Midland crowd, got a standing ovation, and it was really neat, but it was too wet for the bands to march because of the pads falling out of the clarinets and this kind of stuff. Didn't affect the pipers all. But now back to breathing. You breathe, fill the bag, you mash the bag, but you've got to be careful because if you mash it too hard, you get dissonance, pressure change. So you've got to keep this going. The breathing has got to keep the bag a certain place. The arm bringing it down on the bag keeps the pressure a certain place. And she does this. My starts in the old days, we just gave them quick march or whatever, and usually in tempo it'd be quick march, and the drums would start. And everybody thought we played the same song because every song started with a roll-off from the drums. And they go, why don't you learn a new song? And we'd do an hour program and dance, do all kinds of stuff, slow marches, quick marches, airs, anything you could think of, solos and things. And they said, well, why don't you learn a new song? Would you play that song? Can you play that song you always play? And I kept thinking, people, after the first 8 counts, that's a new song. But nobody... Well, a lot of people never caught on. It's interesting the way things work. It's easy if you know what you're doing. It's difficult if you don't. And if you don't have a clue, it doesn't make any difference anyway. You don't understand it.
Mr. Estes, I wanted to ask you, at what time did the sword dance come in? And what's the symbolism?
They were doing the sword. The girl Brenda Hughes taught them to do the sword dance. But when the Black Watch, I believe the Black Watch came out here, we had some swords, and I'm trying to think, who did they teach that to? Edna Portillo, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, she spent whoever the sword dancer was that day, when they were here, they spent probably 3 hours going through the steps. And the idea, of course, the sword dance, if you step on a sword while you're dancing, you'll die in the next battle or something along those lines. It's a superstition thing. You do the sword dance to purify yourself so you can survive. If you don't step on the sword, it's okay. They're not gonna kill you. Now, that's my story. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but that is the reason that we did it. But, they finally brought some real swords. I used whatever sword we could borrow, beg, or steal from somebody, and I still have 5 or 6 of those swords at the house that I purchased for them to use, but after they bought the real nice ones for the school, do they still have them?
Yes, we do have the claymores. They're in the
Their
closet,
claymores
yeah.
are over there.
I was going to ask you, Mr. Estes, can you tell that one story that you talked about when we used to have the platform?
Okay. I think we were in Lubbock. We played a football game in Lubbock, and originally we put a wooden platform on a bass drum and held it in the air, and they do a Highland fling up 5 or 6 feet in the air. And for some reason, at Lubbock, we took some people to carry, and we just rolled up some old uniforms and had the girl dance on the board while braced on the shoulder of these girls, and the board broke, cracked in the middle. So I ran out on the field and got in the middle of it and held the board up while the girl finished. And then when she finished, she jumped down, and then the board fell in 2 pieces, and the ovation from the crowd was outstanding. I mean, it was like, what are these? How do you do that? How do you get these people to do that? You ask them to do the best you can do. Be the best you can be. Perfect? No, we're not. You're never going to make it. Perfection doesn't exist. Just be the best. Is that what you wanted?
Yes, I wanted that story. That's the story.
So, Mr. Estes, you mentioned that when you started here, you had 16.
16.
16. What was the largest number you ever had?
I can't remember the, pardon, I can't remember the exact year, but one year I had so many pipers and drummers that we used a drum major at each end. And if I remember right, we marched either 50 or 52, and that was every uniform, every bagpipe, every drum that we could stick together and get the hole together long enough to get on the field. And when I left in 1992, I had 16 pipers and drummers. And there's a lot of reason for that, but my daughter told me don't give them negative stories, but I actually had counselors tell me, this student cannot take pipe band. I don't care if her mother was your drum major. I don't care if she was your best student. She can't be in pipe band because it's not going to prepare her for college. And yeah, I think she ended up in pipe band anyway.
So ironic that you started off with 16
And
when you
ended
ended
with
with
16,
16. So
yeah.
16 was a big number.
30 years.
30 years. So a lot of people don't understand that back in the day, the pipe band actually used to compete at UIL.
Yes, in
Marching
fact,
band
we had
contest.
17 first divisions in a row, and one day one of the students came and she said, I don't want to go to competition. And I said, why? She said, well, we beat another group at Bel Air, the band. They hadn't had that many first divisions. And I said, we don't even compete with them. Now, this is a true story, and it's negative, but I want to tell it. The marching contest tickets started at 7 o'clock. Either the pipe band or the drum corps performed at 6:30, and the next group at 6:45, 15 minutes before the official opening of the contest. So we never had a big crowd, just the parents and a few people that knew we were going to perform. So, and that came right out of central office. We'd go to competition before the competition started. but we had 17 first divisions in a row. And one of the men that heard we went to Portales, New Mexico, my first out-of-town trip back to my college. And one of the men that I went to school with judged 15 years later, and he said, "Wow." I said, "Wow, what?" He said, "The first time I heard them play, I couldn't even tell what they were doing." And he said, "I want to congratulate you. This was a great performance." I didn't do it, the kids did it. I thought up what we'd do, and they did the work. I didn't do anything.
So one last question, and this was, I just saw an old pipe band performance at UIL, and so I was wondering, did you write the drill out for the pipe band? Were you the person that actually wrote the drill out during all that during the performances?
This is not really going to answer your question. I did every drill, and we changed drills every week. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the old UIL 1940s. You had a set Texas A&M style marching. You had to march so far straight, and you did an oblique, and you did an oblique, and then you did a flank, and you did a counter march, and I would go out on the way. I hate to say this, on the way from the room to the stadium, I'd be going through my head, now, how are we going to do this week? So we'd start in a block band. We'd come out. We'd do a march through. I'd learn by watching Texas A&M what I call a double delayed counter march, where we can march and dodge each other. And if you're doing this right, exactly 2 steps apart, which 60 inches, and you do it exactly like it's supposed to be done, it all comes out, and you end up in a block going some way, or you end up in a diagonal, but I did all of these, and we did also, and you never do this again. How about turning out the lights at the stadium and doing a lighted show with lights on the drones, and see the patterns on the field in the dark? You turn off the lights at the stadium now, and there's no telling what would happen, you know. But we did this a number of times. Homecoming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Friday night, and sometimes just on a Friday night. I kept wondering, they used to turn the lights on for 30 or 40 minutes so they'd heat up and be ready for the game. And we'd turn them off at halftime, and they'd come right back. I wonder why they did that early. But anyway, I thought this stuff up in my head many times while I was on the way down there. My knees are bad now. That's why I use a cane. I ran up and down that stadium, I don't know how many 100 times a week. Run up, you're 1 inch out of line, get over there, you know, and then run back down and move them, because they didn't know which way 1 inch would be or what direction to go, right? But anyway, I had more fun, and they paid me to boot. They didn't pay much for a long time. But when I got my wife out of college and we got 2 paychecks, then we started doing well. And I could afford to buy reeds and stuff for the pipe band that the school didn't want to spend money on. So, now another negative, but I had a really good principal one year. He was actually the industrial arts teacher when I started here. He came back here later on from one of the feeder schools, and he said, "I don't want you doing anything. I've heard all the stories about you. You're not going to do this." 3 weeks later, he called in. He said, "Would you clear everything with me after you agree to do it? Just come and let me know what you're doing." And I said, "What's the change?" He said, "I didn't understand." He said, "I didn't realize how important this group is to the school." And I said, "Well, you told me I couldn't do anything." And he said, "Yeah, but I've changed my mind. You do what you do, and I will approve it later." And whenever he left, we got new uniforms. Now, not because of what I did, because of what he liked.
Mr. Estes, which year was your favorite graduating class at Bel Air?
Now,
I understand that it was a class of 71 and 72 was likely, but what was your second favorite?
Well, are you talking about pipe band class or all the classes?
All the classes. Pipe band.
I wouldn't touch that question at all.
Well, the
had-
reason I was asking is because I'm a graduate from
I know.
71
I know.
and the class from 72, and
The reunion was absolutely marvelous.
we have a big surprise coming next week. No, next month, February 15th, that you're cordially invited, and I understand that you will be here for that presentation.
That's the plan.
And anyway, it's I guess a total of about $20,000 that'll be going towards the pipe band.
I hope, actually, I don't know whether that'll even be a scratch, but I'm hoping it'll get things going again. How many students do you have?
We have 4 pipers and 2 snare and 1 bass.
Well, see, when I got here, I had 16. And like I said, the faculty had to vote on those people. And by 1966, my first class, I just said, these are the people that are going to be in pipe band, and nobody complained. And so from then on, if you could survive my beginning class and me and stand me long enough to come be in my class, I had a lot of students for 4 years. And you get to know the kids pretty well in 4 years.
How many boys did you have total in
Boys,
the entire program?
2. Michael Calleros and Kim Ingram. Kim Ingram actually went to the same university that I attended, became a choir director, and took his choirs in Florida to the Vienna Boys Choir competitions and things, and he passed away this last year. Now, Michael Calleros is still alive, and I saw him, 5 years ago at that reunion? I believe it was 5 years ago.
Mr. Estes, I wanted to ask you if you had any good for writers, any background on Woody and why he was named Tam O'Shatner,
Well,
and who was the artist and sculptor?
I checked with, I Googled it. Kalijah, the Indian at Isleta, the article was very small and I couldn't read all the info, but in 1948, J.M. Hanks dedicated that Indian, and as I understand it, the same gentleman that carved that particular statue carved the Highlander. I have no idea why they named him Tam O'Shanter. That's a story. It has nothing to do, well, it's a Robert Burns story. I always thought they should have named him Robert McDonald or something, but that was my grandfather, so, it's one of those things that I don't know. And someone asked, was Sherry
Sandra Smith.
Sandra Smith, if she was the model for that? I have no idea. Sandra Smith was the drum major the year before I came here. I believe Patty Thoyers was my first drum major. And I used to have band directors come and pick my drum major. And they say, well, who do you want? I want the best. What person do you want out of the group? I want the best one. And so the whole 30 years, I never tried to influence anybody who picked the drum major. The band directors that came to do the picking picked the best one, and I had some good ones, and I had one that I think she left school. She caused a lot of problems. She was shoving people into lockers and stabbing them with pencils and doing things. But she was really a good drum major on the field. She just had a bad attitude and a bad problem with the other students. I could tell more, but that's all you need to know.
I always remember my first drum major when I was a freshman in your program, and that was Patsy. I forgot her last name, but it was Patsy. She was our drum major, and she was
Patsy Olivas?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was a tough one.
Yeah. But I had really good kids for the most part.
The best kids in El Paso come to Bel Air.
Well, I thought so.
I mean, here's two examples.
Well,
Three
My-
examples.
Oh, three examples. I forgot, man.
my kids
Yes.
happened to go to Eastwood, and somebody asked me, well, why didn't you let your daughter come and be in the pipe band? I wouldn't put that punishment on anybody. I wouldn't want, you know. I want my daughter being in my class, and I had an assistant principal tell me one time. He said, you know, my daughter wanted to be in your class, but you were just too mean. You were just, you were mean and you were hateful. And I thought, I wonder if he knows me at all, because
You weren't mean. Not at all.
I was loud, but I wasn't mean. And I might have done a few sneaky things, but sometimes you got to gouge a person to get them to do what you want them to do, right? Don't you have that with
Mr. T, do you have any
Hi,
comment on
Director
that?
Vance.
Sir, I have no clue what you're talking about, but I'm going to take your advice on that, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Estes, are there any tips that you could give the bagpipers relative to maintaining bagpipes?
Don't mess with them. Let somebody knows what they're doing. Do what they have to do. I would work. A lot of mornings I'd be here at 7:30, 6:30 to do repairs or work on a pipe. And I'd get it all set up, and the first thing they do is pop the reed. Well, if I'd wanted the reed popped, I would have popped it. I'd already adjusted it the way I thought it should be. You've got it a lot easier. The reeds are, you're not using bamboo reeds anymore, are you?
No, well, for the pipe chanter, yes, I am.
Yes.
But for the drone reeds, they're all synthetic.
Yeah, they're all synthetic, and they've got little rubber bands, and you move them and you tune them. And well, I used to have to take thread and tie all of those and work with them and sand on them and spend a lot of time, which
What would you like to see happen to the pipe band going forward?
would be nice to have them here.
And how would you like to be remembered as the longest-serving pipe band director at Bel Air High School of El Paso, Texas?
You're not going to believe this story, but I retired in 1992, went out to the Amigo Air Show, and one of the ladies that was an English teacher, I taught English 10 years also. The last 10 years I taught bagpipes and English, and ran into an English teacher out there, and she was setting up a booth for some group, and there was a young lady with her, and she said, oh, this is Mr. Estes. He was the pipe band teacher at Bel Air. And she said, this is one of my Bel Air students. And the girl said, we had a pipe band at Bel Air? So if you can't remember me from May till October, I don't know. I have no answer for that. How would I like to be remembered?
Mr. Talamantes, would you have one last question for Mr. Estes?
That was actually going to be my last and final question. How would you like to be remembered, sir? You know, what would be your final stamp? I think the favorite comment that you said that you've said today for kids is, do your best.
Yes. Be your best.
Be your best.
You don't have to be perfect. Do your best.
Ms. Manning, is there any last question that you would like to ask Mr. Estes, especially since you're the current pipe band director here at Bel Air?
Well, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to tell you, Mr. Estes, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciated you so much as my pipe band director and what you did throughout all these years, because you made it fun. We loved pipe band. We just looked forward to coming to school, doing the football games, and marching the halls, and that you provided everything for us to do that.
We call those band rats, right? They wouldn't come to school at all if they didn't have their favorite thing to do. Now, you've got other students that have the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Drama. I don't know about speech, but drama, shop, but they have their favorite thing. And that's the main thing.
Oh, absolutely. In a lot of ways, our elective courses, like the bagpipe band, whether it's architecture, soccer, whether it's another form of athletics, it draws our kids and keeps them excited and energized to be here throughout the school day and keep coming back every day.
Right. and that's worth $1 million.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Estes, as the principal of Bel Air High School, I did want to let you know that you have an open door here. You are always welcome here at Big Red Pride. I hope you make your visits regular and consistent here, and not just with our pipe band, but across the campus. And
It would be nice.
you can feel at home here in the new buildings.
I wouldn't even know my way around this building. It's unreal.
No, I mean, we are blessed with a brand new 21st century campus, buildings A, B, and C. But make no mistake about it, we are going to continue the deep and rich traditions of Big Red Pride and merge that with the new learning spaces, and that's the goal.
There were a lot of traditions that got dropped along with some of the principles, not understanding. It always irritated me personally to see someone who had no idea about what went on at this place for 30 years come in and go, oh, that's not important. We don't need to do this, and it is important. If it wasn't, the X's wouldn't be over here bothering you. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, in my
pushing you.
No, in my experience, it's been less than 2 years, but no, there's been a lot of overwhelming support from alumni.
Yes.
And it was very clear when I first set foot on campus that my role really is not to start new traditions as much as to reestablish and deepen our commitment to longstanding traditions here at Big Red Pride. The pipe band being at the center and at the heart of that, along with other traditions.
Are the little pine trees still at the east end of the stadium?
Yes, sir.
Have they been kept up?
Yes, sir.
Those were planted for the 10 folks that did not make
Memorial.
it through Vietnam War. And I was down here one time and half of those were dead. And that really bothered me.
Those the memorial is still standing. The trees are serviced by our grounds department at
Yeah.
our central
Well,
office, so we
I
continue honoring our veterans.
hate to say this, but I don't drive down Yarborough very often. After pulling in every day, sometimes Saturdays and Sundays, for 30 years I was afraid my vehicle would just pull in the driveway and go ahead and park somewhere. So I stay away from Yarborough as much. I mean,
But please know you are always welcome. You have an open door.
I
here at
appreciate
Bel Air.
that very
Yes, sir.
much. Thank you.
Mr. Estes, we want to thank you very much for taking time out from your schedule to be here with us today and honoring us with your presence. And, thanks to the teachers and the band leaders and all the personnel at Bel Air High School that have made so many students successful throughout the years. And Marla's a great example in following in your footsteps. So we want to thank you, very, very much. I believe that education is a divine calling because you don't get rich. So, I was not in pipe band, but I certainly want to thank you for being a director here for so many years.
Like I said, I had great
know,
kids.
And teaching is the way God transforms the world we live in, and you've contributed in changing the lives of so many Highlanders throughout the years, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. That was one thing that really impressed me about the reunion. I had some people that came to talk to me that night that were in my 6th grade band classes. They said they were. I didn't remember because we were talking about 40 and 50 years ago, and they came up and said, I really enjoyed that band class. And remember that time you started us on? I started my youngest son in a summer band class. He ended up with a scholarship to the University of Arizona, got to play in the Olympic band in 1984, and all because he decided to come to, well, he would have started band anyway, but I started him in the summertime at one of my summer band classes. They paid $2 an hour sometimes for those jobs. And it was worth every day.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.